Donald Trump's presidency in the United States has brought about the most radical changes in the international political and economic arena in the last century. Donald Trump set out on this path with the Make America Great Again strategy, targeting both countries close to him and actors he sees as his rivals. On February 1, 2025, President Trump issued 3 executive orders, ordering the United States to impose new tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China, which will take effect on February 4, 2025.
I'm Helena Humphrey. Good to have you with us. We begin with breaking news out of the White House, where U.S. President Donald Trump has signed tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China, America's top trading partners.
Tonight, with the battle over tariffs, President Trump imposing steep taxes on the country's 3 largest trading partners, Canada, Mexico, and China, sparking fears of a trade war, which could threaten the global economy.
The executive orders included an additional 25% ad valorem tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico and a 10% tariff on imports from China. These tariffs would apply to all imports except Canadian energy resource exports, which would face a 10% tariff. The tariffs would have been in effect for goods entered into consumption or withdrawn from storage for consumption on or after 0001 Eastern Standard Time on February 4, 2025. Goods in transit to the United States were exempted from the tariffs the day before Trump issued his executive orders. The tariffs imposed on Canada and Mexico were met with concern by experts in terms of global economic balances. The tariffs on China were seen as the cornerstones of U.S. leader Donald Trump's expected strategy. In other words, it was no surprise that Trump targeted Beijing through economic channels. Additional tariffs on imports from China were set at 10% ad valorem. The new tariffs will be in addition to other duties, fees, charges, deductions, and costs imposed on covered imports. The additional tariffs appear to apply only to products classified as originating from the People's Republic of China. There is no indication in the executive order that the duties will apply to goods originating in Hong Kong or Macau. This, of course, did not sit well with China. Officials in Beijing have argued that U.S. leader Donald Trump is not really targeting China, but the world economy.
We're also going to cover these sweeping new tariffs on imports from Mexico, Canada, and China. They're set to go into effect at midnight. More than $1 trillion in imports from those 3 countries flow into ports each year. We're going to have more on the impact of the tariffs on America. Chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce starts us off.
According to economists, Trump was trying to curb China's growing superpower status. Donald Trump had not only Beijing on his radar, but also the Moscow regime, which he sees as a supporter of Russia. For the U.S. leader, the Russian wing was probably also seen as a major risk factor. In particular, the war in Ukraine was one of the issues that bothered Trump. The EU and US sanctions against Russia were already weighing on Kremlin leader Vladimir Putin. But Donald Trump wanted more to further weaken the common alliance between Russia and China. In order to stop the deterrence of China and Russia, Donald Trump has deployed other strategies besides tariffs. But what were Trump's other measures besides the tax trump card to keep Russia and China out of the game in Latin America? How will these measures put the US ahead of both countries? Will China, with the support of Russia, be able to counter US leader Donald Trump's competitive challenge in Latin America? We will discover the answers to all these critical questions together. We will take a deeper look at how international economic and political balances are shaped by the triangle of the US, China, and Russia, and how Latin American countries are involved in this process. But first, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and give us a like to stay informed about our content. Let's get started. First, let's look at US leader Donald Trump's plans beyond the tariffs on China. US President Donald Trump and his administration have recently turned their attention to Latin America. The Trump administration's focus has been on the Panama Canal. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Panamanian President José Raúl Mulino to discuss the management of the Panama Canal. Secretary of State Marco Rubio warned Panamanian President José Raúl Mulino that his country could face possible retaliation from Washington if U.S. President Donald Trump does not reduce China's influence over the Panama Canal.
En torno al tema del canal es imposible. Yo no puedo negociar, y mucho menos abrir un proceso de negociación sobre el canal. Eso está sellado, el canal es de Panamá.
José Raúl Mulino described his meeting with Marco Rubio as respectful and positive, claiming that Rubio made no real threats to take back the canal or use force. Rubio did, however, tell Mulino that Trump believes China's presence in the canal zone could violate an agreement that led to the U.S. handing over the waterway to Panama in 1999. The agreement stipulated the permanent neutrality of the U.S.-built canal. Secretary Rubio made clear that this status quo is unacceptable and, absent immediate changes, will require the United States to take the necessary measures to protect its rights under the treaty, the U.S. State Department said in its summary of the meeting. Molino did not indicate that he felt a real threat to the treaty and its validity. Panama's president announced that his government would not renew its participation in China's Belt and Road Initiative after the expiration of its current agreement. The initiative, which funds infrastructure projects around the world, has been criticized for putting developing countries under heavy debt burdens to China. By announcing that he would not renegotiate the agreement that has been the focus of such criticism, the Panamanian president also acknowledged that he would not go against U.S. doctrine. Rubio later toured the canal at sunset with its director, Ricardo Vasquez. Vasquez said the waterway would remain in Panama's hands and would be open to all countries. The U.S. diplomat's visit comes amid growing concerns about China's influence on global trade routes. Last week, he warned that Chinese-operated port facilities at both ends of the canal make the waterway vulnerable to political pressure from Beijing. Rubio has made it quite clear that Trump wants to manage the canal again, despite Molino's firm stance that Panama will not negotiate over ownership. Speculation continues that the government may consider a compromise and potentially remove Hong Kong-based Hutchison Ports from its role of managing canal operations. The company was given a 25-year no-bid extension to oversee operations, but an ongoing audit could lead to a re-tendering process. It remains to be seen whether Trump would be satisfied with the transfer of canal operations to a US or European company, or whether his administration would seek greater control over canal management. Trump's threats to take back the Panama Canal, an important maritime trade hub, on the grounds that it imposes excessive fees on the United States, have sparked a backlash in the country that has controlled the canal for more than a quarter of a century.
En torno al tema del canal es imposible. Yo no puedo negociar, y mucho menos abrir un proceso de negociación sobre el canal. Eso está sellado, el canal es de Panamá.
Panama's President José Raúl Mulino said they rejected everything Mr. Trump had said. José Raúl Mulino emphasized that the Panama Canal belongs to them. Panama's position had changed, this time that they, and not China, had a say in the region.
64-year-old Molino won the single-round first-past-the-post race with more than a third of votes cast. Even as the poll results were coming in, first runner-up Ricardo Lombana conceded defeat.
But these events, which took place only a few days after the start of the second term of the Republican Party, complicated the new administration's task of countering the Russian, Chinese, and Iranian forces taking root in Latin America. Many Latin American and Western officials working in the region believe that the region is becoming an increasingly important area of competition for world powers, and that the new U.S. administration is well aware of this. It is for these reasons that the new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, the highest-ranking Hispanic-American official in U.S. history, has chosen Central America and the Caribbean for his first tour of duty, putting Latin America at the forefront of the new administration's foreign policy agenda. Speaking at the Royal United Services Institute think tank in London, Baroness Jennifer Chapman, the UK Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Latin America and the Caribbean, said she was assessing the approach of US allies. The first few days of the administration launched a rapid crackdown on immigration and thousands of arrests by the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. Many of those targeted in the administration's immigration focus have been undocumented nationals from Latin American countries. Brian Fonseca, director of the JACD, Gordon Institute for Public Policy at Florida International University, said he thinks this will affect the relationship between the U.S. and the Latin American region.
And staying in the United States, the Texas Department of Public Safety has confirmed that Border Patrol agents were fired upon from the Mexican side of the border just yesterday.
When the president returned to the Oval Office this month, he signed an executive order designating Mexican cartels of banned substances and other criminal gangs operating in Latin America as terrorist organizations. Baroness Jennifer Chapman, the UK Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Latin America and the Caribbean, said that while British officials will not always agree on the details of Trump's new agenda, she believes they should continue to engage in close dialogue with the region and the US to work towards common goals. Baroness Jennifer Chapman also pointed out that countries like the UK and the US need to understand why many Latin American countries are so interested in relations with China, particularly economic ones. Colombian President Gustavo Petro turned back US military planes carrying deported citizens after Trump made a very public threat to impose tariffs against Bogotá. The White House said in a statement that Colombia had backed down and accepted all of Trump's terms without limitations or delays. This backtracking is likely to attract a lot of attention from China. China is spending resources to expand its influence in Latin America, especially its economic power. Officials and experts say Russia is expanding its cultural footprint in different parts of the region, and Iran is tightening its grip where it can. Many believe that the United States has neglected Latin America somewhat in recent years, which some see as a reason to turn to China. This has also given Russia a sphere of power in Latin America. Alvaro Mendez, head of the Global South Unit at the London School of Economics, said that the US had lowered the bar too much, and that China only needed to do a little better to get in the door. We can see that the region is by no means homogeneous. In general, many countries in the region are plagued by the illicit drug trade, fragile public institutions, and the damage caused by organized crime. Some countries, such as Venezuela, are criticized by the US as undemocratic and embraced by Washington's rivals. Others, such as Mexico and Chile, are labeled close allies by the US. But the State Department has called Santiago one of the strongest partners in Latin America and a leader in promoting respect for the rule of law. While Chilean Defense Minister Maya Fernandez floated the idea of closer defense ties with China during a recent visit to Beijing. Juan Carlos Pinzon, Colombia's former defense minister and Bogotá's ambassador to Washington, said that Latin America is increasingly becoming a chessboard for global powers. Juan Bartolomé, Secretary of International Defense Affairs at the Argentine Defense Ministry, said that countries like Russia are playing a long-term game in Latin America. Iran is very active in spreading political turmoil in countries such as Venezuela and Bolivia, Bartolomé said. Juan Bartolomé also said that Tehran is trying to make countries in the region sweat. It goes without saying that these efforts are supported by Russia. Any unintended unrest in Latin America would benefit Russia and China in particular. It is expected that Russia will continue to use Iran indirectly to create turmoil in this regard. Marcelo Masaleras, a former Chilean military official and senior researcher at the Athena Lab organization in Chile, said that Iran is investing in its diplomatic presence in Latin America and also supporting cultural centers in the region, especially in Bolivia. Bolivia, which shares hundreds of kilometers of border with Chile, signed a security agreement with Iran in 2023. Some do not see the region's options for global connections as a binary choice. According to experts, most countries from the southern cone to just south of America's land border do not realize that they have to choose between the United States and China. Sarah Martinez, a national intelligence officer in the U.S. Office of the Director of National Intelligence, focusing on the Western Hemisphere, confirmed this. She argued that different international partners can help them with different pressing needs, such as prosperity or security, and that countries in the region really want to have a range of partnerships beyond the great powers. The US understands this, Martinez said, but warned that this does not eliminate concerns about how China's strong economic ties to the region could influence government decision-making. According to Sarah Martinez, China's been trying to overtake the US as South America's largest trading partner in recent years. But is China's goal really to cast a shadow around the US? The opening late last year of a massive new port in Chancay, just north of Lima, was seen as a step towards consolidating China's shadow in Latin America. The port is run by China's state-owned COSCO Shipping, and more Chinese infrastructure is expected to emerge on the South American continent. Trump has claimed that the Panama Canal is controlled by China, a claim Panama and China have denied. But if we look at recent events, Panama has been moving closer and closer to China and away from the United States over the last 5 years. In 2017, Panama stopped recognizing Taiwan, which is self-governing, but which Beijing considers part of China. General Laura Richardson, who retires in November 2024 as head of the U.S. Southern Command covering Latin America, told legislators earlier this year that Beijing knows that economic power is a prerequisite for global military power. According to experts, Chinese influence through the Panama Canal is indeed working to reduce US power in the region. However, Donald Trump's desire to put an end to this and his ambitions to take control of the Panama Canal are a major obstacle to China and Russia's strategy going forward. Russia's efforts to reduce US influence in Panama point to China's efforts to increase its power in the region. Moscow had a message for the new US President Donald Trump in this regard. The Moscow regime told Trump that he should not even think of seizing control of the Panama Canal. In a statement, the Russian Foreign Ministry said that the Panama Canal legally belongs to Panama and warned the United States not to try to take it back, whether through military or economic coercion. During the expected talks between Panamanian leaders and US President Donald Trump on the control of the Panama Canal, the parties should respect the existing international legal regime of this important waterway, said Alexander Shaytinin, director of the Latin American department of the Russian Foreign Ministry. After Russia, it was, of course, North Korea's turn to speak out on the Panama Canal. North Korea recently issued its first direct criticism of the Trump administration, condemning Rubio's description of the country as a rogue state. The North Korean Foreign Ministry said that the words and actions of the person in charge of US foreign policy had once again reaffirmed the unchanged US policy towards the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The statement appeared to refer to Rubio's remarks in which he called North Korea and Iran rogue states while discussing foreign policy priorities. While the United States has long labeled North Korea a rogue state, Pyongyang's reaction suggested that Trump would remain confrontational with Washington despite his recent rapprochement with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. In an interview, Trump described Kim as a smart man and expressed his willingness to resume diplomacy. When asked if he would reach out to Kim again, Trump said he would contact him. However, North Korea's recent reaction on the Panama Canal issue, which is in line with Russia's policies, has put paid to any scenario of positive relations between Trump and Kim Jong-un. In short, the US leader Donald Trump's turn to Latin America following his tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China has in fact set the stage for competition on the global stage. The fact that Russia and North Korea are uncomfortable with Donald Trump's targeting of China through the Panama Canal gives important insights into how things will work in the region. According to experts, Russia and China's power in Latin America will diminish, while the US will increase its control efforts in the region. In the coming days, we will clearly see which scenario will be realized and which side will be more dominant in Latin America and even in the global economy. Thank you for watching.